Have you ever wondered what happens when fake news targets the most sacred office on earth? This is the incredible story of how a corrupt cardinal spread the most dangerous lie in modern church history, claiming that Pope Leo XIV was dying, only to discover that God's truth is more powerful than any human deception. What began as a calculated attack on our Holy Father became the greatest demonstration of divine protection that the Vatican has witnessed in centuries. It started on a cold February morning, when Cardinal Vincent Torriani, a man whose ambition had long ago consumed his soul, decided that Pope Leo XIV had to be removed from power. The Holy Father, born Robert Francis Prevost in the neighborhoods of Chicago, had been too successful in his reforms, too effective in cleaning up church finances, too beloved by the faithful around the world. In Torriani's twisted mind, the only way to destroy a pope this popular was to make the world believe he was already destroyed. The cardinal's plan was diabolically simple. Using his connections with corrupt media contacts and his influence over certain Vatican employees, Torriani began spreading whispers that the Pope had collapsed during morning prayers. He bribed a night shift janitor to leave the papal apartments in apparent disarray, paid off a medical technician to falsify health reports, and even convinced a few weak-willed prelates that they had witnessed the Holy Father's collapse with their own eyes. Within hours, the lie had spread faster than wildfire across social media. News outlets around the world, always hungry for breaking Vatican stories, picked up the false reports without proper verification. Pope Leo XIV near death screamed headlines from New York to London, from Sao Paulo to Manila. The fake news machine that Torriani had set in motion was working exactly as he had planned. If you want to feel Jesus' love in your heart today, subscribe now and turn on the bell. The Lord blesses those who seek him with an open heart. But Cardinal Torriani had made one crucial mistake in his web of lies. He had underestimated the power of truth and the protection that God provides to those he has chosen to serve. Pope Leo XIV, completely healthy and unaware of the storm brewing around him, was peacefully celebrating his private morning mass in his chapel, praying for the souls of the world just as he did every single day. The first the Holy Father learned of his supposed death was when his secretary, Father Miguel Santos, burst into his study with tears streaming down his face and a tablet showing the devastating headlines. "Holy Father," the young priest sobbed, "the whole world thinks you're dying. Cardinal Torriani is already calling emergency meetings to discuss papal succession. What are we going to do?" The scale of Cardinal Torriani's deception became clearer with each passing hour. He had spent months planting his accomplices throughout the Vatican, creating a network of lies that reached into every corner of church administration. Swiss guards who had been bought with promises of advancement spread rumors in the barracks. Secretaries who owed Torriani favors whispered false medical updates to journalists. Even some bishops, terrified of the cardinal's power and influence, began publicly expressing their grave concerns about the Holy Father's health. The fake medical reports that Torriani had commissioned were masterpieces of deception. Dr. Francesco Bellacorte, a disgraced physician who had lost his license in 3 countries, had been paid handsomely to create detailed medical files showing Pope Leo XIV suffering from a rare degenerative condition. The documents looked official, complete with Vatican letterheads that had been stolen and medical terminology that sounded convincing to reporters who didn't know any better. American Catholic communities were thrown into chaos by the false news. From the parishes where Pope Leo had served as a young priest to the neighborhoods where his mother had raised him in faith, people gathered in emergency prayer vigils for their dying Holy Father. Mrs. Catherine Kowalski, who had known young Bobby Prevost when he was an altar boy at St. Adalbert's in Chicago, organized a round-the-clock rosary that drew hundreds of faithful Polish-American Catholics who remembered the Pope's roots in their community. "I can't believe our Bobby is dying so far from home," she wept, as she led the sorrowful mysteries, her worn rosary beads clicking softly in the candle-lit church. He was such a good boy, always helping the old ladies carry their groceries, always stopping to pray when he passed the shrine of Our Lady. If God is calling him home, at least let him know we're praying for him. The international media circus that surrounded the false reports grew more frenzied by the hour. Television crews from major networks stationed themselves outside the Vatican, broadcasting live updates about the Pope's deteriorating condition, based entirely on Torriani's fabricated sources. Social media exploded with prayers, condolences, and speculation about who would be the next pope. The hashtag #PrayForPope became the top trending topic worldwide as millions of Catholics begged God to spare their beloved Holy Father. Cardinal Torriani watched the chaos he had created with satisfaction, believing his plan was working perfectly. He began making subtle overtures to other cardinals about the need to prepare for the inevitable transition, positioning himself as the steady hand that could guide the Church through this crisis. His ultimate goal was to manipulate the College of Cardinals into electing him as the next pope, using the fake death of Leo XIV as his pathway to ultimate power. But while Torriani was busy weaving his web of lies, Pope Leo XIV was very much alive and beginning to understand the magnitude of the attack against him. The Holy Father's first instinct was not anger, but profound sadness for the souls involved in the deception. "Father Santos," he said to his secretary as they reviewed the false reports, "pray for Cardinal Torriani. A man doesn't spread lies this elaborate unless his heart is consumed by darkness. We must respond to his hatred with love, to his deception with truth." The Pope's calm response in the face of such betrayal amazed everyone around him. Instead of calling for immediate investigations or demanding public retractions, he simply continued his normal daily routine, celebrating Mass, meeting with pilgrims, working on his papal writings. It was as if he understood that the truth has its own power, and that lies, no matter how elaborate, eventually collapse under the weight of reality. As word began to spread among Vatican insiders that the Pope was actually perfectly healthy, a different kind of energy began building in the sacred halls. Those who had been genuinely grieved by the false reports of his death were now filled with a mixture of relief and righteous anger at being deceived. The web of lies that Cardinal Torriani had so carefully constructed began to unravel when several honest Vatican employees started questioning what they were actually seeing with their own eyes. Sister Mary Catherine, an American nun who had worked in the papal household for 15 years, was the first to publicly challenge the false narrative when she encountered Pope Leo XIV walking peacefully through the Vatican gardens during what was supposed to be his death watch. "I was taking fresh linens to the papal apartments when I saw His Holiness feeding the birds by the fountain, looking as healthy and peaceful as I've ever seen him," she later testified. "When I asked him about all the prayers being offered for his recovery, he looked genuinely confused. That's when I realized something terrible was happening and it wasn't the Pope who was sick." Dr. Maria Fernandez, the Pope's actual physician, was horrified when she learned that false medical reports bearing her forged signature were circulating in the media. "I examine the Holy Father monthly, and he's in excellent health for a man his age," she declared in a press conference that sent shockwaves through the international media. "These reports claiming he's dying are complete fabrications. Someone has committed a serious crime by forging my medical credentials and creating false documentation." The truth began spreading through social media as fast as the original lies had traveled, but with a crucial difference. This time, people were sharing actual photographs and videos of Pope Leo XIV looking vibrant and healthy. Pilgrims who had attended his recent public audiences posted their pictures. Swiss guards shared videos of the Pope joking with them during his morning walks, and Vatican employees began speaking out about the deception they had witnessed. Meanwhile, Cardinal Torriani found himself in an increasingly desperate position. His carefully planned lie was collapsing, and with it, his dreams of papal power. Instead of admitting his deception, he doubled down on his false claims, insisting that the Pope was being drugged to appear healthy for public appearances. "The Vatican is covering up the severity of his condition," he told a secret meeting of cardinals he thought he could manipulate. "We have a duty to prepare for the inevitable transition of power." But Torriani had misjudged the character of his fellow cardinals. Cardinal James O'Malley of Boston, who had worked closely with Pope Leo during his years in America, stood up in the middle of Torriani's presentation with fire in his Irish eyes. "Vincent, I've known Robert Prevost for 20 years, and I know a lie when I hear one. What you're suggesting is not just false, it's evil. You're asking us to participate in the destruction of a good man's reputation based on fabricated evidence." The confrontation that followed was unlike anything the College of Cardinals had experienced in modern times. Cardinal after cardinal stood up to denounce Torriani's deception, sharing their own recent interactions with the Pope that proved he was in perfect health. Cardinal Luis Tagle from the Philippines showed cell phone videos of the Pope laughing and talking with children just days earlier. Cardinal Peter Turkson from Ghana read aloud from a letter he had received that morning from the Pope, written in the Holy Father's own distinctive handwriting. As the truth emerged, the faithful around the world experienced a range of emotions that defied description. The initial relief that their beloved Pope was alive and well was quickly followed by righteous anger at being deceived, then overwhelming gratitude to God for protecting their shepherd from this unprecedented attack. Churches that had been holding vigils for the dying Pope spontaneously transformed their gatherings into celebrations of thanksgiving. Mrs. Catherine Kowalski, who had been leading prayers at St. Adalbert's in Chicago, fell to her knees in the sanctuary when she received word that Pope Leo was alive and healthy. "Thank you, Jesus, thank you, Blessed Mother," she cried, as the entire congregation erupted in applause and tears of joy. "Our Bobby is alive. God has protected our Holy Father from the evil that tried to destroy him." The scene was repeated in Catholic churches across America and around the world as the truth spread faster than the original lie had traveled. What had begun as Cardinal Torriani's attempt to destroy Pope Leo XIV's papacy had instead become a powerful demonstration of how God protects those he has chosen to serve, and how truth, no matter how fiercely attacked, always finds a way to emerge victorious. The investigation into Cardinal Torriani's elaborate deception revealed the shocking scope of his conspiracy and the depths to which ambition had corrupted his soul. Vatican security, working with international law enforcement agencies, uncovered a network of bribery, forgery, and media manipulation that stretched across 3 continents and involved dozens of accomplices who had sold their integrity for Torriani's promises of power and money. The evidence was overwhelming and heartbreaking. Bank records showed payments to corrupt journalists who had spread the false death reports without verification. Email trails revealed conversations between Torriani and disgraced medical professionals who had created fake health records. Phone recordings captured the cardinal coaching his accomplices on how to lie convincingly to investigators and media outlets. Perhaps most shocking of all was the discovery of Torriani's secret journal, found hidden in a false bottom of his desk drawer. In his own handwriting, the cardinal had documented his plan to remove the obstacle of Leo XIV and his belief that he was destined to restore the Church to its proper power. The journal entries revealed a man so consumed by pride and ambition that he had convinced himself that lying, cheating, and destroying innocent reputations was actually serving God. "I am the leader this church needs," read one particularly disturbing entry. "Leo XIV is too soft, too American, too focused on the poor and weak. When I am Pope, I will make the Vatican respected and feared again. The ends justify any means necessary to achieve God's will." It was clear that Torriani had completely lost sight of what it meant to be a servant of Christ, transforming the gospel message of love and humility into a twisted justification for his own lust for power. Pope Leo XIV's response to these revelations was characteristically filled with mercy rather than vengeance. When presented with the evidence of Torriani's betrayal, the Holy Father's first words were a prayer. "Heavenly Father, have mercy on Vincent's soul. Help him find his way back to the truth and love he has abandoned. Give me the grace to forgive him completely, as you have forgiven me." The Pope's decision regarding Torriani's punishment surprised everyone, including the cardinal himself. Instead of the public humiliation and harsh canonical penalties that many expected, Pope Leo XIV chose a path of quiet mercy. He stripped Torriani of all his positions and titles, but rather than expelling him from the church entirely, he sent him to a remote monastery in the mountains of Peru, where the cardinal would spend the rest of his life in prayer, penance, and service to the indigenous poor. "Brother Vincent has lost his way," the Pope explained to the College of Cardinals who had gathered to hear his decision, "but he is still our brother, still a child of God who deserves a chance to find redemption. Hatred and pride have poisoned his heart, but love and humility can still heal him if he allows them to. We will pray that his time in solitude and service will restore his soul to Christ." The international media, which had been complicit in spreading Torriani's lies, found themselves in the uncomfortable position of having to report their own failures and apologize to their audiences. Several major news outlets launched internal investigations into how they had been so easily deceived, implementing new verification procedures to prevent similar deceptions in the future. CNN's Vatican correspondent, who had been among the first to report the false death story, offered a tearful on-air apology. "We failed you, our viewers, and we failed the truth. In our rush to break news, we abandoned the basic journalistic principle of verifying our sources." Pope Leo XIV is alive, healthy, and continues to serve the Church with the same grace and wisdom he has always shown. We deeply regret our role in spreading this harmful deception. The ripple effects of the truth's emergence were felt far beyond the Vatican walls. Catholics around the world experienced a profound sense of relief and renewed faith in God's protection of His Church. Many faithful saw the exposure of Torriani's lies as a modern miracle, proof that no amount of human scheming could overcome divine providence. In parishes across America, priests used the incident as a powerful teaching moment about the importance of truth, the dangers of unchecked ambition, and the power of God's protection over those He calls to serve. Father Michael O'Brien, pastor of St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, delivered a homily that captured the feelings of many. "My dear brothers and sisters, we have witnessed something extraordinary. We have seen how lies, no matter how elaborate, cannot overcome truth. We have seen how hatred, no matter how cunning, cannot defeat love. Most importantly, we have seen how our God protects His servants from the attacks of those who would do them harm." The aftermath of Cardinal Torriani's failed conspiracy brought unexpected blessings to the Church and strengthened Pope Leo XIV's papacy in ways that no one could have anticipated. The attempt to destroy the Holy Father through lies had instead revealed the depth of love that Catholics around the world felt for their Pope, and the unity that emerged from the crisis was stronger than anything the Church had experienced in decades. American Catholics, in particular, felt a special pride and connection to their Pope, who had withstood such a vicious attack with such grace and dignity. The fact that he had chosen mercy over revenge, forgiveness over punishment, reminded them of the best values of their faith and their country. Prayer groups that had formed during the false crisis continued to meet, now offering thanksgiving rather than petition, their bonds strengthened by the shared experience of nearly losing their beloved Holy Father. Mrs. Dorothy Martinez, who had organized a prayer vigil at her parish in Los Angeles when she believed the Pope was dying, decided to continue the weekly gathering as a permanent ministry. "We came together in fear and sorrow," she explained to her growing group of participants, "but God used our suffering to bring us closer together and closer to Him. Now we meet every week to pray for the Pope's continued health and for all the Church's needs." Something beautiful came out of something terrible. The exposure of the fake news scandal also led to positive reforms in how the Vatican communicated with the world. Pope Leo XIV established new protocols for medical information, requiring multiple independent confirmations before any health updates could be released. He also created a new department dedicated to combating misinformation about the Church, staffed by professionals who understood both technology and theology. "Truth is not just a virtue we should practice," the Pope explained in his first public address after the crisis. "It is a necessity for the Church's mission in the modern world. We cannot allow lies and deceptions to poison the wells of communication between the Holy See and the faithful. From this day forward, we commit ourselves to absolute transparency and honesty in all our communications." The Pope's response to the crisis also became a powerful example for Catholics dealing with their own experiences of betrayal and false accusations. His choice to forgive Torriani completely, while still holding him accountable for his actions, provided a blueprint for how Christians should respond when they are wronged by others, especially by those they trusted. Father Thomas Anderson, a parish priest in rural Iowa who had been falsely accused of financial impropriety by a disgruntled parishioner, found comfort and guidance in the Pope's example. "His Holiness showed me that forgiveness doesn't mean pretending wrong didn't happen," he shared with his congregation. "It means choosing to respond with love instead of hatred, with mercy instead of revenge." The Pope forgave Cardinal Torriani, but he also made sure Torriani couldn't hurt anyone else. That's real Christian leadership. The incident also strengthened relationships between the Vatican and media organizations that had learned hard lessons about the importance of verification and truth. Several news outlets established Vatican correspondent positions specifically dedicated to building trustworthy sources and fact-checking procedures, creating a more reliable flow of accurate information about church affairs. Perhaps most importantly, the crisis had revealed the unshakable foundation of Pope Leo XIV's papacy. The attempt to destroy him through lies had instead demonstrated his character, his faith, and his commitment to Christian values. Cardinals who might have remained neutral in church politics now rallied enthusiastically behind their Holy Father, creating a unity of purpose that would serve the Church well in the years to come. The faithful had also learned valuable lessons about the importance of seeking truth from reliable sources and not allowing emotions to override careful thinking. Many parishes began offering classes on media literacy, helping parishioners distinguish between reliable news sources and sensationalist reporting that prioritized speed over accuracy. The miraculous aspect of Pope Leo XIV's triumph over Cardinal Torriani's deception became clear in the days following the exposure of the conspiracy. What human observers had initially seen as a simple matter of lies being revealed as falsehoods turned out to be something far more profound, a demonstration of divine protection that strengthened faith around the world and reminded believers that God's providence extends even into the age of social media and instant communication. The first sign that something supernatural was at work came from an unexpected source. Dr. Francesco Bellacorte, the disgraced physician who had created the false medical reports for Torriani, experienced what he later described as a complete spiritual awakening while sitting in his jail cell awaiting trial. "I was looking at my hands, the same hands that had written those lies about the Holy Father," he tearfully recounted to a prison chaplain, "when suddenly I felt this overwhelming presence of love and forgiveness. I knew, absolutely knew, that God was calling me to confess everything and beg for mercy." Bellacorte's detailed confession provided investigators with crucial evidence, but more importantly, his genuine repentance became the first of several dramatic conversions that followed the scandal. The man who had been paid to lie about the Pope's health became one of the most effective witnesses to the Pope's integrity and the power of divine forgiveness. Even more remarkable was what happened to some of the journalists who had spread the false story. Maria Santos, a Spanish reporter who had been among the first to broadcast news of the Pope's supposed illness, began experiencing vivid dreams in which she saw Pope Leo XIV surrounded by brilliant white light, very much alive and praying for those who had wronged him. "I'm not a particularly religious person," she admitted in a later interview, "but these dreams were so real, so powerful, that I knew I had to investigate the truth more carefully." Santos's subsequent investigative reporting helped expose several other aspects of Torriani's conspiracy and led to her own conversion to Catholicism. "I went from trying to report the Pope's death to discovering my own spiritual life," she marveled. "God used my mistakes to lead me home to the Church. That's not journalism, that's a miracle." The most dramatic spiritual intervention occurred during Pope Leo XIV's first public appearance after the scandal broke. St. Peter's Square was packed beyond capacity with faithful who had come from around the world to see with their own eyes that their Holy Father was alive and well. As the Pope stepped onto the balcony overlooking the square, something unprecedented happened that was witnessed by thousands and captured on countless cameras. A flock of white doves, appearing from seemingly nowhere, circled the Pope 3 times before landing on the balcony railings around him. The symbolism was unmistakable to the Catholic crowd. The Holy Spirit was visibly blessing and protecting their shepherd. But what happened next left even skeptics searching for explanations that went beyond the natural world. As Pope Leo XIV raised his hands to bless the crowd, a beam of sunlight broke through the thick Roman clouds that had covered the city for days, illuminating the Holy Father in golden light while leaving the rest of the square in shadow. The image, captured by photographers from every major news organization in the world, became one of the most iconic photographs in modern papal history. "I've been covering Vatican events for 20 years, whispered BBC correspondent James Morrison to his cameraman, "and I've never seen anything like this. It's as if heaven itself is confirming that this man is exactly where God wants him to be." But the most profound miracle was not visible to cameras or crowds. It was the change that occurred in the heart of Cardinal Torriani himself. In his remote monastery in Peru, surrounded by the beauty of the Andes Mountains and the simple faith of indigenous Catholics, the disgraced cardinal began the slow process of rediscovering the humility and love he had abandoned in his pursuit of power. Brother Vincent, as he was now known, spent his days caring for orphaned children and his nights in prayer and penance. The man who had once dreamed of ruling the church now found joy in teaching children to read and helping elderly villagers tend their gardens. In letters to Pope Leo XIV, which the Holy Father read but never published, Torriani expressed his gratitude for being given a chance at redemption rather than simply punishment. "Your Holiness," read one of his letters, "I tried to bury you with lies, but instead I buried my own soul in darkness. Your mercy has become the light that is slowly bringing me back to life. Pray for me as I pray for forgiveness every day. I am beginning to understand what it truly means to serve Christ rather than myself." The lessons that emerged from Cardinal Torriani's failed conspiracy became powerful teaching tools for Catholics struggling with their own experiences of betrayal, deception, and the challenge of responding to evil with good. Pope Leo XIV, recognizing the opportunity to strengthen his flock's faith, began incorporating these experiences into his regular teachings, showing how God's providence works even through human weakness and sin. In his weekly Wednesday audiences, the Pope frequently returned to themes of forgiveness, truth, and trust in divine protection. "My dear brothers and sisters," he would say, his voice carrying the warmth that had made him beloved by Catholics worldwide, "we have learned together that lies may travel fast, but truth travels forever. We have seen that those who plot evil against God's servants ultimately serve God's purposes, even when that is the last thing they intend." American parishes embraced these lessons with particular enthusiasm, finding in their Pope's example a model for responding to the divisiveness and misinformation that plagued their own society. Father Robert Murphy, pastor of Sacred Heart Church in Boston, incorporated the Pope's teachings into a series of homilies about truth and reconciliation that drew capacity crowds every Sunday. "His Holiness showed us something vital," Father Murphy explained to his congregation. "When someone attacks you with lies, you don't fight lies with more lies. You fight lies with truth, hatred with love, and betrayal with forgiveness. That doesn't mean you become a doormat. It means you become a saint." The practical applications of these spiritual lessons extended far beyond church walls. Catholic schools across America developed curricula about media literacy and critical thinking, teaching young people how to distinguish between reliable information and sensationalist claims. The Pope's experience became a case study in how to respond thoughtfully rather than emotionally to shocking news, especially in an age of social media where false information spreads faster than facts. Mrs. Patricia Williams, a high school religion teacher in Philadelphia, used the Torriani scandal as the foundation for a course she called Faith in the Digital Age. Her students learned to ask crucial questions. Who benefits from this information? What sources can verify these claims? How should a Christian respond to unconfirmed reports about people they respect or disagree with? The Pope taught us that our first response to any news, good or bad, should be prayer, she explained to her students. Not panicked sharing on social media, not immediate outrage or celebration, but prayer for wisdom and discernment. When we heard he was dying, the right response was prayer. When we learned it was false, the right response was still prayer, for the truth to emerge and for those who had spread lies to find redemption. The incident also provided powerful lessons for church leadership at every level. Bishops' conferences around the world studied how the Vatican had handled the crisis, learning valuable lessons about crisis communication, the importance of verification, and the power of transparent honesty in building trust with the faithful. Cardinal Timothy Dolan, reflecting on the experience during a meeting of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, observed, "We learned that our people's love for the Church runs deeper than any attack against it. We also learned that mercy and justice aren't opposites. They work together to heal wounds and prevent future harm." The Holy Father didn't just forgive Cardinal Torriani. He created systems to make sure no one else could be deceived the same way. Perhaps most importantly, the crisis had strengthened the bond between Pope Leo XIV and Catholics around the world. The false reports of his death had reminded the faithful how much they loved their Holy Father and how empty the Church would feel without his gentle leadership. When they learned he was safe and healthy, their gratitude translated into deeper commitment to the Church's mission and greater trust in papal authority. The prayer groups that had formed during the crisis continued to meet regularly, creating new networks of faith and support in parishes across America. The rosary chains that had circled the globe when people believed the Pope was dying transformed into ongoing ministries of intercession for the Church's needs and the world's healing. In small towns and big cities, in suburban parishes and urban cathedrals, Catholics had learned that their faith was strong enough to withstand any attack. Their unity was deeper than any attempt to divide them, and their God was mighty enough to turn even the most malicious deception into an opportunity for grace and growth. As the months passed and the full impact of the Torriani conspiracy became clear, the Catholic world witnessed what could only be described as a renaissance of faith centered around Pope Leo XIV's extraordinary response to betrayal and deception. The Holy Father, who had been targeted for destruction, had instead become a beacon of hope and reconciliation that illuminated the entire Church with renewed purpose and joy. The transformations that occurred in the wake of the scandal were both miraculous and practical. Brother Vincent, the former Cardinal Torriani, had become genuinely beloved by the poor indigenous community he now served in Peru. His letters to Rome, filled with humility and gratitude, were eventually published as a small book titled From Darkness into Light, A Cardinal's Journey Home. The proceeds were donated entirely to programs combating misinformation and supporting victims of clerical abuse, making Torriani's former evil a source of ongoing healing for the Church. "I thought I was serving God by seeking power," Brother Vincent wrote in one of his most moving reflections. "I have learned that God is served by seeking the smallest place, the humblest work, the least recognition. Here among these beautiful children who cannot even pronounce my real name, I have found the peace that all my scheming never brought me. His Holiness gave me exile, but God gave me home." The media reforms that Pope Leo XIV had initiated in response to the crisis became a model for religious organizations worldwide. The Vatican's new Department for Truth in Communication worked with Catholic universities to train journalists in responsible religious reporting, while also developing rapid response systems to counter misinformation before it could spread widely. Dr. Sarah McKenna, a communications professor at Georgetown University who consulted on these initiatives, marveled at the Pope's comprehensive approach. Instead of just defending against lies, he created systems to promote truth proactively. Instead of just criticizing bad journalism, he invested in training good journalists. It's the most sophisticated response to fake news that any religious institution has ever implemented. American Catholic parishes experienced a renewal of devotion and unity that surprised even veteran observers of church life. The shared experience of almost losing their beloved Pope, followed by the joy of discovering he was safe, and the inspiration of seeing him respond with such grace, had created bonds of faith that transcended traditional divisions. Mrs. Catherine Kowalski, now in her 80s but still leading weekly rosary groups at St. Adalbert's in Chicago, became something of a celebrity in Catholic media for her unwavering faith during the crisis. "People asked me how I kept believing when everything looked so dark," she would say with a smile that reminded everyone of their own grandmothers. "I told them, I knew our Bobby. I knew God doesn't make mistakes when he chooses his popes. If God wanted him home in heaven, that would be beautiful. If God wanted him to stay and lead us, that would be beautiful too. Either way, I trusted." The scholarly analysis of the Torriani affair produced important academic works on the intersection of faith and media in the digital age. Catholic universities developed new courses on discernment in the information age, while seminaries added training on crisis communication and pastoral responses to misinformation. The scandal had become a teachable moment that strengthened the Church's ability to navigate modern challenges. Pope Leo XIV himself seemed to grow in stature and authority following his trial by deception. His homilies carried new depth, his papal documents addressed contemporary challenges with greater insight, and his personal interactions with pilgrims radiated a joy that came from having been tested and proven faithful. He had faced the worst kind of betrayal and responded with the best kind of love, earning him a place among the great papal figures of history. The anniversary of what Catholics had begun calling the Day of False Death became an unofficial feast day of gratitude and truth. On that date each year, parishes around the world held special services, thanking God for Pope Leo XIV's continued leadership and asking for protection against the forces of deception that constantly threatened the Church. In his annual address commemorating the anniversary, the Pope always returned to the same theme. "My dear brothers and sisters, We learned together that God's truth is stronger than human lies, that divine love is more powerful than earthly hatred, and that the gates of hell shall not prevail against the church that Christ built on the rock of Peter. Let us never forget these lessons, and let us always remember that our faith in God's providence is never misplaced, even when we cannot see His plan. As pilgrims continued to stream into St. Peter's Square to see with their own eyes the Pope who had been dead but lived, as letters of gratitude continued to arrive at the Vatican from Catholics around the world, and as the Church continued to grow stronger through the lessons learned from crisis, one truth became undeniable. God had indeed used the greatest attack on Pope Leo XIV's papacy to make it the most blessed and effective pontificate of the modern era. The man they had tried to bury with lies had risen in truth, and his light now shone more brightly than ever before, illuminating the path forward for the entire Catholic Church.